Hey, welcome to the Seats the Streets podcast. I'm one of your hosts, J.R. Horn, and this upcoming series on the podcast is like none else. We've got a brand new resource actually developed by our co-host, Brian Gorman, on how to join in with your people, co-workers, congregation, and to be able to focus on what they're focusing on and to really build rapport and trust and to care for them. So I can't wait for you to have that. But first, I want to share with you our official podcast sponsor is Pioneer Bible Translators. Pioneer Bible Translators with prayers, their strategy is focused on transforming lives through God's word in every language. They are sold out on bringing the Bible to Bibleless people. I'd encourage you to go over to pioneerbible.org and to be able to give the Seats the Streets podcast official sponsor a visit on their website. But for now, welcome to the Four Focuses series of this podcast. Hey, I'm JR, this is Brian, and this is the Seats the Streets podcast, and you are in for an awesome teaching today. Now, we actually deviated a tad bit from what our normal approach would be as Brian and I getting together and actually putting our minds together to solve all the world's problems. And which I think, Brian, we're doing pretty good at all the world's problems. We're down to the last four, maybe,
Yeah,
I think,
most of
but
it's
I'm not
resolved.
good. I'm
Most of it.
not good with numbers. So still working on that. But actually, this entire series they're about to embark on, this is Brian's. Brian has created an awesome resource for churches, for ministries, for missionaries, for agencies, for anyone really on how to connect and understand and join people where they are, and to be able to communicate in such a way that there is a great rapport building and relationship building. And so I'm privileged because this is something I've been able to listen and hear and bounce back off of Brian to see what's going on. So Brian, I've man, I don't want to stop. I don't want to keep up time anymore. Give us an overview. What is this awesome resource that you've created to be able to give out to people?
Well, it all stems from there's this idea that floats around like that God is constant, right? And I know it's an idea that's not, it's in the Bible, that God is constant, but sometimes that's been misinterpreted as though God is a stoic, right? If we
Hmm.
listen to the way most people portray Jesus on TV, it's always Jesus, the philosopher, right? His
Mm-hmm.
tone is almost always the same. But you don't get that when you read the Bible at all. You get Jesus who speaks to people in all these different ways. At one point it looks at a group of people, you brood of vipers, and then at another time goes, oh, nobody condemns you. Okay, well then I don't condemn you either. You get these different voices of Jesus. You get the jokes he tells, and I started looking at that, going, okay, why? Like, why does Jesus do it that way? Why does he tend to alter what he's doing? And what he's doing is altering the way he's communicating with different people based upon the types of things that those people are focused on. And so what we started looking at was, how do we engage well with people based upon their focuses? And what I mean by focus is, we've all had that moment where you're driving down the road and somebody goes, oh, did you see that? Right? They're fascinated by something and they want you to be fascinated with that same thing, right? They want you to join them in the thing they're looking at, right? There's times where I cook a lot, and there's times when I'm cooking and someone's in the room, hey, taste this, right? Because I want them to experience what I'm experiencing, and it's a way for that other person to join me. As leaders, if we're thinking that way all the time, then we have the ability to go, wait a minute, our people, all of our people are focused on something right now. How do I focus on the same thing they're focused on in order to better connect with them, better communicate with them, better lead them? And so what I found is there's typically four main areas that people are focused on. There's four focuses that they carry. Some people are focused on looking at power. Some people are focused on a distinct plan. Some people are focused on play, and some people are focused on people. Now, I do want to clarify something a little bit here. Let's look at what we mean here. There are people who are just loud, strong, dominant people. They are focused on an end result. They don't care that much about how you get to the end result. They just want the end result, and they are going to help make sure it gets there. They are used to being in control. They are focused on the power that is involved in getting to the end game. The plan people are focused on saying, what's the idea? How are we going to get there? Like, I don't really care where we're going. I just want to know how we're going to get there. And that's where they are. The play people are like, hey, as long as something blows up at the end, cool. Like, let's just let's have a good time. Let's enjoy ourselves along the way. And the people focused people, they're the emotion type people. At least it comes across that way. They're the ones who are saying, as long as we can all get along, we'll be
Yep.
fine. And they're more connected to the relationships than they are anything else. And when we recognize these four focuses and begin to engage well with them as leaders, we'll find that the way in which we lead, the way in which we love, the way in which we care for people is dramatically changed. So that's kind of the overview of these four focuses.
So, Brian, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Can you name me one famous person who is power focused?
Name a bunch of those guys. If you're looking for your far side of it, you do have people like King Saul, oftentimes kind of fell into this bracket, and Donald Trump absolutely falls into this bracket. There are a lot of people in politics who tend to fall into that vein, and a lot of people who are involved in like directing and producing and writing, because they're used to getting they want control over the thing that they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that now in a lot of the entrepreneurial or entrepreneurial gurus that are popping up. Grant Cardone would be one that would absolutely be in that power focus. Sitting in on one of his conferences a couple of weeks ago, I mean, he's clearly power focused. So, all right, Brian, biblical character, famous person for planning focused.
Quite often you see it in the Apostle Paul. Not always, but quite often, like Paul will build a list, right?
Yeah.
Add to this, right? The fruit of the Spirit is, and he builds out his list, right? He kinds of, there's some components of that within him.
Yeah.
When you see, even when you see Jesus turning over tables, that's power side of Jesus.
Yeah.
But when you see Jesus lay out, hey, they're going to turn me over to the Romans to be crucified, to be dead for 3 days. I'm going to come back to, right? That's a plan focused person. He's giving people the order and structure. A lot of comedians are this way. Jerry Seinfeld, if you've ever seen any of Seinfeld's way of functioning, they're very much this kind of person, because they have the ability to see the quirkiness of the way in which things are put together. That's part of their wiring, is they can sort of see that,
craft it in such a way to get to that punchline and make a punchline that you and I could give that would fall flat. Ooh, but when they give it, it's because they've done this, and it works.
Yeah.
So to me,
project managers for these people.
Yeah. So to me, Luke would be an absolute plan focus. I mean, when he's writing about this is the order, most righteous Theopolis of what took event, the events that took place. So who would be a people focused?
People focused. I mean, obviously you have the moments of Jesus who sees the people in their distress and cares for them. You get people like that. A lot of times it's interesting to read a lot of King David's writings, because there's a lot of that in there too. There's things that David should have done and he backed off on because he just kind of got afraid, or was afraid that it was going to hurt people's feelings, which is weird. He didn't mind killing thousands of people, but when it came to his own family, wouldn't put his foot down on some things he probably needed to. Within the world that we see here today, you're gonna, a lot of times your therapists and counselors kind of fall into this bracket. Not always, but a lot of times they're going to fall into this bracket. You get people like, if you watched The Office, right, the character Pam Beesly would very much sort of fall into this sort of bracket. They're just as long as everybody's okay. And so that's the people focused person.
Would King Solomon have been a people focused person?
Solomon's intriguing because he tended to do a lot of those different things, but I definitely see, like, Elijah tends to have a lot of this wiring. The prophet Elijah, who's often like, I'm the only one who even cares anymore. It kind of takes this woe is me. People focused people are oftentimes on the edge of depressed. They tend to come across a bit depressed all the time because they're just they empathize so deeply with
Yeah.
all of the emotions around them, but they tend to only empathize with the negative emotions. They tend
Hmm.
to they hear with other people's ears, which is intriguing.
Hmm.
Like they'll be offended for somebody else.
Yeah. Right. So play. Who would be someone biblical character, famous person that would personify the play focused person?
Um, I think you get a lot of that from. I catch a lot of that from John is from John. And I catch a lot of that from Mark. I mean, Mark's kind of big, exciting. These things we're doing. You read Mark really kind
Yep.
of this very quick pace. But the reason I say John is because John chooses to take this whole story about Jesus and make his jabs about Peter.
Yep.
Right? It's yeah, two guys ran to the tomb, John and
That's
Peter. John did happen to get there first. Right.
Yep.
The apostle Jesus loved, right? Not like you guys, right? I get that, like the jabs and the jokes that he makes, that kind of speaks to that as well. But you also see it in a lot of Jesus' parables, right? A lot of his parables are meant to be comedic. Like the statements he's
Yeah.
making, the stories he's telling, because these kind of people are storytellers, right? Your
Hmm.
play focused people are your natural storytellers. And what you don't see Jesus do all that often is like tell you go do A, then B, then C. But what
Right.
you will hear him do quite often is say, well, let me tell you a story. You asked a question, let me tell you a story. Right? I have an illustration, I have a parable. And that's very much this sort of component. So
Right.
today you're going to get those sort of people. Um, you know, you're going to get those people. I always go back to The Office, right? Michael Scott's going to kind of be in this bracket,
Hmm.
just as long as we're having a good time, that it'll be okay. And if anybody's not having a good time, it's unacceptable. That somehow things are wrong, right? Wants
Hmm.
to do work, just doesn't want to do hard work, and you get a lot of this in a lot of sitcoms. The father in a lot of sitcoms are these kind of people, um,
Hmm.
because they're the lovable oaf,
That's true.
and so they need their power focused, plan focused wife to actually accomplish anything in the real world. Is how a lot of sitcoms tend to set those components up. If you're a fan of
Yep.
Friends, you see a lot of this laid out in Friends, right? No one's ever been able to figure out what Chandler's job ever was, but he knew how to tell the jokes. He knew how to kind of go about that sort of thing. You get
Yeah.
uh, uh, Monica was absolutely that power plan person, right? You get these different components in there that
Yeah.
all sort of speak to that. So it's all over the place
So
if you look for it.
the idea behind these four focuses, I know when someone listens to this, Brian, they can go, "Oh, this sounds like this personality test that I took," or "This sounds like you're
Yeah.
describing me. I'm an Enneagram 7, Wing 8." When actually this isn't a personality profile. Any of these understanding, possessing, and utilizing these focuses is not another personality profile. It's not a disc assessment. It's not an Enneagram or anything like that, because they actually lead to something that's detrimental. We oftentimes, the negative part, the cloud that sits over all of these personality profiles, and your disc assessments, your Enneagrams, um, even the fantastic one with Patrick Lencioni, your working genius, it tends to breed tribalism, because I want to know myself so well that I can find my tribe, right? I can find
Mm.
my tribe, and I want to go and be with them because we speak the same language. We're going to do the same thing, and really what we're trying to do is we're actually trying to find emotional security and stability. I'm stable talking with this person. I'm accepted. We know each other. I'm not looked down on, because I am an INFP versus an EN whatever. For the longest time, I didn't know that, if you had an Enneagram, you only had a wing. So if I'm a 7, that means I'm either a wing 6 or a wing 8. Well, when I looked at the Enneagram and just said what I thought I was a 7 and a 3. And so I would say I'm a 7 wing 3. And they're like, dummy, you can't have a wing 3. It's got to be the wing of the 7. So it's a 6 or an 8. And I'm like, well, I don't like those. I don't know if I want I don't know if I
Yeah.
want one of those as my wings. So
And you're
this isn't
speaking to the
that.
core issue. You're speaking to the core issue that at the end of the day, all of that stuff at its core is
Yeah.
selfishly focused.
Yeah.
I'm letting you know my bias. Now, if you're suddenly going, Brian, it's not that cool. I'm telling you my bias. So because
Mhm.
power is my focus. So I'm letting you know my bias here. And my bias is that uh, who cares who you are? I don't want to find more people like me. I mean, let's be honest about this. Most of us don't like ourselves well enough to want more of us, right? So,
Right.
and what begins to happen very quickly is, well, I am this kind of person, you're that kind of person. Therefore, I'm going to struggle with you naturally because, right? You create this immediate environment, and what also begins to happen is people begin to use it to excuse ineffective and ineffectual behavior. But
Mm.
when we can begin to realize the reason why a play focused person is play focused is emotional stability and security. It's the reason
Yep.
why they tell a joke when things get really awkward and uncomfortable because they emotionally
Yes.
struggling, right? And so they do this to bring some to kind of calm their own emotions, that stability. My favorite are the plan people because the one who almost look like robots, and people assume that they don't have emotions because they're so that way. Or power people who oftentimes people assume, oh, he's such a jerk, she's so strong, like there's no emotion behind it. And what we fail to recognize is all of what they're doing is because they're looking for emotional stability and security.
Yep.
That plan person sees the chaos and they just need a list to feel like there is an order to what's going to take place. That power person can't stand feeling like they're just spinning around over and over and not
Mhm.
going anywhere. They need a hill to go conquer. When we recognize that that is what this is, then it lets us love others well
Yeah.
because we're trying to help calm their emotional instability, their emotional insecurity, and tell them that their emotions matter to us. I think this is the most overlooked component of all of the personality communication models,
Yeah.
and it's the most overlooked component is that it's about the emotions of the other person. And one of the
Yeah.
best things we can do as their leaders is care for their emotional stability and security.
So Brian, you said this quote earlier, and I had to write it down. You said to love someone well, you need to focus on what they are focused on. Now, uh, explain that in a physical way to where we would sit and focus with that person. If I'm the I you know I we'll talk about this here in a minute. But I am a power and a play person. So if I come to you and I am communicating or I'm focusing on something playful, and let's say playful for you is kind of lower down the list, um, how can you love me well by focusing what I'm focusing on, even though you're a self-described super high power? How do you love me well by doing that?
So we'll pull it out of this and put it into another format. So JR, myself, and another friend of ours are in a constant texting thread. Like there is always a text going on, but quite often it's just a meme, it's a picture, it's a video, right?
This is what I
Now,
ate for lunch.
what's kind of funny is
That's for
the
me.
the third party in this one is is this odd mix of a lot of different components.
Yeah.
Um, but there is a strong people focus in him, but it's based upon his background. It's unusual. So if you really want to drive him crazy, don't reply or respond to any of the memes he sends. Don't say ha ha. Don't like it. Don't click
Yeah,
the
not
little
even a little
heart.
hold it and little thumbs. Nothing. Nothing.
If it goes for more than about like a half an hour, he starts to feel very lonely.
Yes.
Like did did I do something wrong? Like did it not come across the right way? And it could be that we were just busy, but like that matters to him. So one of the most loving things that you do is you reply and respond
Yeah.
because it says I'm looking at the thing that you wanted me to look at. That's all this really comes down to. So years ago, all right, I'm gonna tell a story on JR here. So years ago, JR and myself and another friend of ours, who was at the time the worship minister at our church.
Oh, not this
We're
one.
oh yeah, this is happening. So we're driving down. We've been on the road for quite a while, and the guy who was with us, very people focused, and people focused individuals tend to hide a lot of their own true emotions because it's so raw to them. But he starts telling this deeply heartfelt story. Like, it is a passionate story. It is about something that is really meaningful, impactful to him.
That's
And
which
I
is
could, I'm driving the car. I'm driving the car. It was so great to see.
digging a hole
And
for
I
me,
could
buddy.
see behind us is this just gigantic semi pulling up beside us. And this is where I was not loving. I saw what was there. I knew what was going to happen. I slowed down because I wanted this thing to get up here next to us, because it had two gargantuan shiny gas tanks on the side, and
It
we're
was an
right
awesome semi.
in the most heartfelt moment of this dude's story. These gas tanks are right at eye level, directly across from JR. He turns to them and he's like, "Hey, I think it's got two gas tanks." And he just, like, full voice, full loud, like nothing else was happening in the world. Right. And you just saw our friend in the back. Just, if you could have slowly deflated a balloon,
I mean,
that's
if
what it
Eeyore got depressed,
that's,
it would be our
what
friend.
it was. And it was so, like, in a movie, it'd been hilarious, but that's how that went down, right? But what we're really talking about is that sort of thing. Is, how do I, even though I may be really excited about the shiny gas tanks, how do I love you well enough to stay deeply engaged with what we just said, so I can come back to it? Think of the way most people
Yep.
communicate, right? The way
Yep.
most people communicate is, I'm talking and JR is thinking of the thing he's going to say in a moment based on what I'm saying. And I'm not saying this against JR. That's just how people function. Most people, when another person's talking, they're thinking about the thing they want to reply with.
Yeah.
Not, am I fully engaging with what you're saying? That's all
Right.
we're really talking about with these focuses. If this person is talking about power, we need to engage with them regarding power. If they feel power, we need to engage with that and play and the plan. And this is all based around understanding something. So, JR, I hope people understand this.
So
It's based around understanding the difference between broadcasting and receiving. Can we process some of
yeah,
that?
every one of us have a way of speaking or broadcasting one of our focuses, but 9 times out of 10 we don't receive it. Our ears aren't attuned to the same focus that our mouth is. And so I broadcast, I speak, I give off, I exemplify power focus. I want to get things done. This is what we're going to do at this time. Not so much as a plan that we're going to do all this, but this is the goal. This is the ground we're going to cover. This is this is what we're going to go and conquer. I broadcast power, but I receive play. I take in play. So, case in point, if I worked with a minister one time who was a plan focused minister. He was a plan focused minister. So I know that I broadcast power and I receive play, but he is plan focused. I can't broadcast or receive. I can't broadcast power. I need to broadcast plan, because that's what he's going to hear. He's going to receive plan. So if I had to go in and ask for something, because our ministries bumped up against each other and we had to collaborate. So I needed to be able to go and ask for something. So I laid out a plan. It had bullet points, and I sat down and I broadcasted in plan focused wording. And he picked it up. He's like, "Oh, this is great. That's awesome. Thanks a bunch. We can do that." And that was it. Now, if I would have gone down a couple more offices and I went into my play focused coworker's office, there's no way I could take that and actually utilize that and broadcast that to them, because they wouldn't receive it at all. They would be boring to them, which is why I saw these really awesome shiny gas tanks on a semi, because I checked out of that a long time ago. That's, I'm still working through that with my counselor. So everyone has their way of broadcasting and receiving. This is pivotal. Like, time out, hang on. You have to understand that, because most people think, oh, because I'm an INFP, that I'm this diplomat or I am this whatever. It's that both ways. It's not reciprocal in this. The only thing that's reciprocal is you broadcast and you receive. That's the only thing that turns. But what you communicate one way and you receive a different way. So if you want me to go along with your plan, you have to share how much fun it's going to be and how cool it's going to be and what shiny things we get to go do. But I've also got to hear in that as well that we're going to be able to go and accomplish something. There's a bit of that power there too. So this helps you figure out, how do I interact with my staff? If you're the lead minister of your church and you have a pastoral care minister on staff, well, you're not going to broadcast in plan focus. You're not going to broadcast in power focus. Pastoral care minister is going to be extremely people focused, and so you're going to broadcast in such a way that that people focus that they can hear you people focus. They can hear your words as people focus. They're going to receive that way. So same thing. So, but here's the rub, Brian, is you have to know your people so well to do that. Even if you have remote workers, and let's say you're very deeply connected with some missionaries that are overseas that hold pivotal goals and timelines for your church missions program. If you don't understand them in such a way on how to look and focus on the things that they're focused on, then there's no way you'll be able to join them where they are and be able to
Yeah.
focus on the things that they're focused on. And the
Let
same
let
way
me add to that just a little bit more. Yeah, is most of the time, and again, I'm not trying to just. I think the Enneagram stuff's great. The Myers-Briggs stuff. There's some great stuff in there. One struggle that people have with the way that they interpret that information is they assume that once I know that you are a whatever, that's what you are. And the reality is that's not true. If if I normally would broadcast as a, which I don't, that's why I use it this way. If I'm normally broadcasting as a people focused person, right, and really in tune with the emotions and the empathy of someone else, but you caught me on a day where a good friend of mine just died, right? I may not have the emotional bandwidth to care about anybody else other than me in that moment. And I all of a
yeah.
sudden will become power because I got backed into a corner and I'm fighting somebody today, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's recognizing that knowing who someone generally is important, but the more we see in our conversation with them in that moment, that in this moment that they're receiving a little more this way or they're broadcasting a little more this way, in that moment people will be any one of these four and variations
Mm-hmm.
and combinations of them based upon the emotional place they're in that day. Again, this is all based upon the emotions of that moment. You interact with me in this setting, I oftentimes come across in this setting as much more power and plan. But anybody that's spent any time with me knows I'm only plan in these strategic environments. The
Yes.
moment that I'm done with this, I am out of that mindset. I don't play that way at all, and I'm not the guy to carry the plan out, um, because that's not who I am. But if someone sees me as this and then labels me as that and only communicates to me like that, we're going to have conflict quite often because that's not the way I'm in outside of that setting. It's the reason why many of us are one thing at work and we're something different at home, and we're even something different when we go back to our parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing the fluidity of this so you can communicate well with people makes a big difference. Who your spouse is when you guys are at home together is different than who your spouse is when they just got done spending like 6 hours with the kids, and they're completely different than who your spouse is when you're on your way to see your in-laws, right?
Yes.
Knowing that the focus just changed because of what they're looking at. And what we want to do is engage with what they're looking at, focus on what they're focused on, and love them well in that. And so this is true for your staff. It's true for the missionaries you're partnering with, because they may normally be plan people. They may normally be power people. But if they just lost some of their best helpers and things are
Yep.
right, their emotions are in a different place, they just became people focused real fast. I've gone through some real challenges lately, and one of my friends came up and like, I just feel like I should, put my arm around you and give you a hug. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'd like to create a plan, because that's what I do to calm myself is I create a plan. Even if I don't carry it out, I create the plan. So knowing that. And so here's how we're going to help you with this in upcoming episodes is we want to help you be able to do a few different things. We want you to know how to pick out where someone is in that moment, so that you can best communicate with them and connect with them and focus with them. We want you to know how to share adjusting feedback when something needs to be changed, and positive feedback. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
really care for them, you want them to hear the good thing that you're trying to tell them. How do you give that kind of feedback? And then how do we help each other engage better as a team? When our missionaries come into town, how do we help them engage better with our congregation engage better with them? How do we help our staff love them and them love our staff? We want to be able to make sure our staff learn how to get along well with one another. So how do we teach and train and develop? So those are the things we're going to focus on as we look at the power, the plan, the play, and the people-focused individuals in our world. That's going to be the upcoming episodes.
Yeah, I can't wait for you guys to have that. We're super excited to be able to put that out for you. And if that's something that you're interested in learning more and taking a deep dive, we'd love to have a conversation with you. Check us out at seatstostreets.com and to be able to click the Connect tab. We want to help you master this and to understand how to better connect and join in with your people, whether that's your coworkers or your congregation. We want to make sure that you have the tools you need to be able to create committed, growing disciple makers. So for me and for Brian, we will see you on the next episode of the Seats to Streets podcast. Take care.
Later.